everybody. This is your old pal Jay Wizzy, and I'm here to demonstrate another fly for you. This time we're going to do the Trespasser fly. This is the original version, and I have made some changes lately, and this is what we've got now. You can see this is got the eyes, it's got a thicker foam. It's just a much improved. I had a couple of issues with the original version with the way the eyes were set and that great big skid plate. It really skid over a lot of stuff, but it created a lot of other problems that we'll talk about as we tie. So let's get started with this thing. I'm going to start with a Tiemco 8089 hook. Center it up on the bend in my Renzetti Clouser vise. I like this straight arm vise for tying these things. It just makes it a lot easier. Alright, now I'm going to start with just a regular, nothing special about the thread, Uni 6/0 red. Build a little bit of a thread base here on the front half of the shank. And then I'm going to attach my eye using this 1/4 inch by 2 millimeter strap of yellow foam. When I first started putting these things together, I was tying my foam cylinder on there directly to the hook. And I had some problems with it, number one, spinning, and number two, the thread cutting through it because I wanted to get it really tight. So this is just a 1/4 inch punch out of a foam flip-flop. If you can't do that, just get some 1/4 inch foam cylinder and it'll work just fine. Anyway, since I went to the strap, I have absolutely no worries about that thing rotating or the thread cutting through it. So I'm going to wrap back a little bit and then just pop that off. Now at this point I'm going to look here. Let me turn that light around there. There we go. And even this up so that I have the same amount of distance to the hook shank on each side. If it's slightly off, don't worry about that because we're going to trim them later anyway. Now I'm going to put some flash in the tail, and this is Midnight Rainbow New Age Crinkle Flash from Cascade Crest Tools. And then it's going to cut a small bundle. Uh-oh, got some getting away. This is kind of gnarly. It's different from like Crystal Flash in that it's got some fibers that are very kinky built into it. And that gives it, to me, a little bit more flash, a little bit more movement, and it causes it to flare out a little bit. And I like that on the tail of some of my flies, just because of the width that it creates. Now I'm going to more or less even up the ends of this stuff. And you can see they kind of got away from me, so they're not exactly even. And then I'm going to cut right where that fold was. Then I'll take that, measure it so it is the length of the entire hook. That's from the very front of the eye to the back of the bend. I'm going to catch that up top with a couple of wraps and then push it down around the shank a little bit. And then work forward. A few wraps. Fold everything back. We're going to do the same thing with this bundle and kind of work it down around the shank a little bit. There we go. And that is locked in. Anything that's exceptionally long on the back end, we're just going to clip it off. I don't want it to be like cut perfectly even on all pieces, so it's just a little bit uneven on the end. Now I've got a couple of pieces of marabou here. It's just a marabou blood quill, and I like to select the more gnarly ones with the thicker stems for the tail. Actually, I think that one's going to work a little bit better for the body shroud. Let me see here, because I want the smallest, thinnest stem that I've got. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead with that original one. Okay, we're just going to measure this so that, again, it's the length of the hook from the front of the eye to the back of the bend. Drop that on there. I'm going to kind of do the same thing that we did with the crinkle flash. We're going to work it around the hook shank a little bit, pinch it, and then tighten it down, hit it a couple more times, and I'm going to run up here behind the eyes. Give that a spin so it's kind of controlled. Cinch it down real good, and then clip off the excess. Alright, now, first thing I want to put on here is my UV purple polar chenille from Hairline. And I want to put that on there so that the fibers on there are pointing towards the hook shank and the core is up. You can see what I've got going on here. Kinda, again, this stuff is pretty gnarly and I like that. But this is going to allow me to be able to stroke that back and get it out of the way. Now I've got a piece of Winter Run Purple New Age Chenille, again from Cascade Crest Tools. There we go. And I'm just going to wrap this from the back all the way up to the front. And I'm going to leave a little gap, about 1/8 of an inch between the eyes and where I tie everything off. Tie that off. Clip it. Give it a couple more wraps. Wrap down the butt of that marabou. Come back to where we were. Now, I want to use a little bit of moisture. I've got a pad over here to the side that's got some water in it. And that kind of helps to grab those fibers together and lets them be a little bit easier to control as I'm wrapping this. Now I like about 4 or 5 wraps with this UV material. If you get the regular polar chenille, I'll do 7 because it doesn't have nearly as many fibers in it. There we go. Once I've got that locked in, I'll make some wraps up front and that just locks the thread down. Then I'm going to come in here and trim that to where I've got a little bit of a butt on the core of the polar chenille, and then I can catch it in with a bunch of thread wraps and just kind of wrap that all up. Now for the shroud on the body, I have another blood quill, and like I said before, I like something with a fairly thin stem, but you can't always find those, so just get the thinnest stem that you possibly can. Strip off a little bit from the thickest part of the butt, and I broke that off doing it. So you can see about how thick that stem is. So to contain this, so it's a little easier to tie, I'm going to put my material clip on there without catching the thread in it. Pull that stuff back and get it out of the way. Now for this, I'm going to kind of prepare it like you would a soft hackle. A little bit of moisture, just to kind of groom those barbs back. Now I want some fairly long barbs on this thing. Now I'm going to come up here really close to the tip, and then I'm going to lay that, a little more moisture on that, lay that right up on top so that I catch not only the stem but all of those barbs, and that's going to make this just a little bit more durable. I'm going to take a couple wraps there, and then holding my feather so it's under control, jump up to where the eyes are, then fold that back and do the same thing, catching the stem and the barbs. And that's going to make that much more durable. Bring my thread back up here behind the eyes. Let's see here, hackle pliers. Now I'm going to take this and wrap it around where I've tied down all my materials. And that's slightly delicate, but we're going to take care of that here in a minute with the skid plate. We're going to glue it down with a little super glue. So work that in there and just kind of wrap that stem right over itself after you get the first couple of wraps. And then when you get to where you've got about a wrap and a half, jump right up behind the eyes. And we're going to bring it over. Bring my thread up and over the stem. Once I get that caught under the thread, I can get that hackle plier off of there. And then just bind the stem down. Get in here. This is going to be fun because it's short. Cut the excess. There we go. Now, I'm going to get in here with my brush and groom that all back. Get that material clip off of there. Then I'm going to put, again, a little bit of moisture on there. And I want to part the marabou up there so that when I do put the super glue on there, it can reach that stem. And that also kind of exposes that contrasting color on the belly. Alright, now for the skid plate, I punch these out with a small cutter that I get from River Road Creations, which was made specifically for the Trespasser. But if you're going to be doing this by hand, that's a 1/4 inch wide, 2 millimeter, and it's about a 1/2 inch long with that point on the front. Just going to line the tip of that up right behind the eye of the hook, and then we're going to bind this sucker down really, really tight to within about 1/32 of the front of the eyes where they're tied in, and then let that hang right there. Alright, now I'm going to take my Loctite super glue liquid and I'm going to flip that over and put a really substantial drop on there. And that's a really good size drop. And let it kind of roll down, pull that marabou down, and then center everything up and then press it in place. Now this is the time where if your eyes are a little bit tilted one way or the other, right, you can move them around and get them flat and perpendicular to the hook shank the way you want them. It just takes about 5 or 10 seconds for that to set up and we're good to go. And that is our skid plate. And you can see that it's going to protect all of that right there when we're running over brush and weeds and things like that. So now we're going to go to the body and the lift. Now the lift is just, let me get that in my hand properly. Here we go. It's just a piece cut out. Again, it's kind of like that skid plate. It's just a piece cut out with the nose of this cutter right here. Again, I had this made by Tony Thomasu at River Road Creations. He does custom cutters. If you wanted to get one of those cutters, I can hook you up with that, or I can hook you up with these body cutouts, which I spent a lot of time designing that so it does exactly what I want to do. That flare towards the back keeps the hook away from any obstructions that you might hang up on, and the point in the front, that helps to help this fly slide through the weeds a little bit better. Alright, I'm going to nip the end of that. Now, for our lift, I've got my thread just a little bit in front of the eye tie-in. And I'm going to come in and catch it right behind where that front taper stops. You can see that. And then I'm going to cinch it down and back so it's tight onto the hook. 4 or 5 good wraps there, really snug, and then whip finish. Now we're going to do the exact same thing with the foam back. I'm just going to reach up there. Again, catching it right behind where that forward taper is. Pull it nice and snug back there. And wrap it in. And whip finish. And don't have to get too carried away with the whip finish because we're going to cover that up in a minute with a little bit of Solaris. Now I'm going to take that foam back, pull it back nice and snug. There we go. And I'm going to pull it until that nose starts to kick up. And then press down on the hook around the curve of the hook a little bit. And you're going to get an impression in there. Get that out of the way. You can see that impression there. I'm just going to poke my scissors through there right at the back of that. Not a lot. I'm just barely poking through there. Just want a hole that's big enough to get the hook point through. Slide that up on there, and then that is the structure of our fly. Now we're going to do a little bit of trimming using my Umpqua bench trimmers. Rest the back edge of that on there, the tips up against the foam back, and then just clip it. And that eliminates catching weeds and things up underneath that nose. Now we're going to do the same thing with the eyes. We're going to just set those clippers up against the two pieces of foam, and I want these to be a little narrower towards the front than it is at the back. Got a little bit of that foam, but don't worry about that. We're going to cover that up with an eye. And I'm going to do the same thing up here, if I can get that piece of fiber out of the way. There we go. All right. Now, again, I'm tapering it towards wider towards the back because I want a V shape up front. That's just another one of those little things that helps this thing work through the weeds and brush and stuff. Now, I'm going to use Gorilla Super Glue Gel. Get my fingers out of the way. Just a nice little drop on either side. Don't get too much on there. You'll end up gluing your fingers to it. Just a very light dab. Now I'm going to put 5.5 millimeter holographic epoxy eyes on there. For this color combo, I like silver. I'm going to get everything out of the way. Put my thumb or my fingernail right back behind on the back side of that eye, and then drop that thing on there. Be careful not to get your finger on the other side in the glue. We're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to put my fingernail there, put that eye up against it, and then drop it in there, and that's going to cover all that foam cylinder. And just kind of hold those in place for a couple seconds. Next thing we want to do is put a little Solaris on there to protect these thread wraps, and this is thin hard formula. I just want a little bit on there. Doesn't need any bulk. Again, we're just trying to protect it. I don't use anything that penetrates the thread, because if I want to change out that foam back, I can just cut the thread wraps that hold the top piece on, and the lift will stay on there, and then I can replace the foam back, because it does get a little bit chewed up when the bass's crusher teeth get in there. Next thing I'm going to do is put a drop right in here. Again, that's to keep anything from catching under the edge of that eye. I'm going to do that on both sides, right in the very front corner of the eye. And I like the thin hard for that so it can flow down in there really good. Cure it. Really good. Doesn't take very long with these. I'm going to cure the eyes in just a second too, so I don't have to worry about putting that on there too long. Now I'm just going to build a little bit of a dome on the eyes, and I don't want it too extreme. Just a little bit. And this helps the fly not to spin so much when you're casting it. The other thing is making sure that your skid plate is flat and not tilted to one side or the other too much. Now when you've got this up top in your vise, that wants to flow forward because of the tilt in the eye, so I like to turn it over and let it flow towards the back a little bit, and then boom, then we'll set it up. And you can see the little bulb we've got underneath there. in the eyeball. And I think that makes the pupil a little more visible from the bottom side for the fish than it does when that eye is flat before you put the resin on there. Now I'm going to put a little bit more on this side. Bulb that eye up a little bit. Again, you don't want it gigantic. I mean, you can if you want to, if that's what trips your trigger, but I just put enough bulb in there so that I can tell that it's bulged out, and that's going to keep it from spinning just like it would with a booby fly. Put flat eyes on a booby and it's going to spin under the water. Put bulbed eyes on there and they do not spin. There we go. I'm going to cure that. Now I'm just going to come around here and cure it from this direction. That'll get both of them. Get those cured up really good. And there you have it. That is J. Wood's Trespasser, the latest version. This thing will fish through any kind of weeds. I mean it. The foam holds it up. It will ride in the water at an angle similar to this because of the foam and the foam eyes. And so you can see the angle under here. It just slides right over everything. And using that darker polar flash underneath, you can see the contrast in there. You can see how much it flashes. It shows a little bit. The marabou, the polar chenille, everything just moves even when it's just sitting in the water. So it's a very, very effective fly for getting in there and getting bass and other predators out of heavy cover where you really can't cast anything else. But it does have a really good hookup rate, and you'll see it does not take anything whatsoever. I'm just putting the weight of my finger on there and that drops. But this little lift brings it right back up so that it's weedless. But if a fish can get its mouth around this, you can see how that point sits. It is going to get hooked. If you use a hook that's got a little more downward point at this section of the hook, then it's going to put that point in the foam, and your hookup rate's going to drop, not drastically, but it is going to drop just a little bit. The way this is right now, if a fish gets its mouth around it, it's about a 95% hookup rate. Now, one thing you want to consider is that bluegills hate this thing, and they crush it, and it looks like a bass is hitting it, but it's a bluegill protecting his territory. And also small bass will do the same thing. So don't be fooled when you get those really heavy splashy hits and you're not getting hookups. A big fish, when it hits this thing, will either come out of the water or you'll get that toilet flush look where it's just, and it's gone. So there you have it. That is my Trespasser. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, tie a few of these up, catch a few big bass, and peace, love, and fly fishing, my friends.